Hello and welcome to another episode of photopodcast.de. We are here in Baden, Austria at the Gacilly Baden, and in front of me I'm having an exhibitor of one of the exhibitions here in Baden, and I have to be honest, it's a very interesting exhibition and with an absolute important theme. So let's present to you Nadia Ferroukhi. Bonjour, Nadia.
Bonjour.
It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I think I have to. It's really important. The pictures you show and the story behind, I think it's very interesting for our listeners. So let's start. But before we get into the theme of our little interview, would you mind to introduce yourself to our listeners?
So my name is Nadia Ferroukhi. I'm a photographer. My father is Algerian and my mother is Czechoslovakian. And I grew up internationally since I was a very young child. I grew up in Algeria, in Austria. Deshalb spreche ich auch ein bisschen Deutsch, auch wenn ich viel vergessen habe, aber es wird besser für mich auf Englisch, das Ganze zu machen. Then I lived in the United States and now I live in France. So as you can see, we're a very international family. So and so it's kind of like logical almost that I chose a profession that also continues the traveling. It's like a drug for me. It's like I need to after a few months I need to go discover a new place. So it's been like this since I was a child. Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be like this until my health permits it, until I'm as old as I can get. So anyway, as I said, I'm a photojournalist and I work mainly for the magazines, for press, and I either have assignments assigned to me from magazines with a story, and we usually go by two. It's always me, us photographers do the story and the journalist does the writing. And or I propose stories to the magazine and they send us. So that's basically how we function. Now for the matriarchy story, it's a little bit different. This was a personal work.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. But before we get to the exhibition and the pictures you showed, how did you get into photography?
On my mother's side, my Czech grandfather was a teacher. He was a mathematics teacher, but he had a second profession. He was a photographer. It was like a hobby, but it was more than a hobby. It took most of his space, and he had a studio and everything. So as we were growing up, going on vacation there, he would always take photos of us. It was like a paparazzi, and we were very annoyed by that. But today, I am lucky to have all these photos of us, of my family, this beautiful black and white photos. I have all his cameras, his old cameras too. So it's a treasure that he left us, me actually, probably the most because I'm in photography. And so I guess I didn't really think of being a photographer, of becoming a photographer, but obviously it influenced me in my subconscious, I guess, growing up. I was always attracted to anything visual. So as I went to university in the United States, I went to college there. I studied international relations. So again, I was doing always photos on the side, but I didn't think to make it a profession. And then when I had my degree, I moved to France, and that's when I went to the Sorbonne for 1 year, and I was kind of like, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was a little bit, lost, and I knew that I did not want to work in an office, everyday regular job. I wanted something a bit more adventurous. So slowly, I started in photography. I started in fashion photography. But very quickly I stopped because I switched to what I'm doing now, which is photojournalism, because I did not really like the whole fashion world. Even though there's some interesting people too, I don't want to reject all that, but it was just not my thing. So I figured, actually, I had my revelation when I went to Yemen. I went to Yemen on vacation back then, and I had some sort of as I said, revelation. And then this is when I figured this is where I belong. I want to be close to the people. I love world cultures. I'm a very humanistic person. My people always say that my photos reflect a lot of humanity, and so I felt so overwhelmed and happy when I was there. So when I went back, I decided that I wanted to go into photojournalism. Mm-hmm. And so slowly, it was very tough in the beginning because I knew no one. So I started doing my little stories. I went to Jordan, did a story, but I couldn't sell it. And then I met a journalist with whom we worked together for a few years. And so this is how slowly I built up my career, I guess. And then, slowly but surely it came.
It's a nice story. It's absolutely to see how you started and without the first success, but working hard and slowly getting better and to arrive at the point where you're recognized as a professional photographer.
Yeah.
Great. And when we talk about the moment when you knew this is the kind of work I want to do and you started to make the first stories, here at Baden we can see 31 pictures of a absolutely interesting, unique work you did. The name is Au nom de la mère, the name of the mother. And there are two things. The first part is always the picture and the story beside. Mm-hmm. And what you do, what I saw and how I understand it is to explain us, the Western people, how they are living, the traditions they still maintain, and that the way they are living, and the part of the women, which is absolutely different to the part the women has here in Europe. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit about the idea of this project?
Well, the first one was Kenya in the Samburu women, and I went there not for a magazine, not for anything. I just took my backpack, my cameras, and went. And actually, I saw a little documentary on Umoja, which was the women village, on TV, and I thought I was very intrigued by that. So I decided to go and meet these women. So I arrived there, but when I arrived there, I went to Umoja village, and the chief of the women asked me for a lot of money to do my story, which I, first of all, did not have. And even though I understand fully that they also want to do their business, but then again, we can't just go on giving money right and left like this. So I was kind of stranded with nothing. She asked for 1,500 euros for 3 days with 2 hours of photos per day. Whoa. So now I was like, no, I cannot do that, So finally I stayed for like 3 days roaming around, not being able to, with nothing, with no material. So finally I met Mohammed, who became my fixer. So a fixer, I don't know, maybe you know what it is, because it's like a term that we use in journalism. It's like a guide, Mm-hmm. It's like the person that in every place I've been to, I always have a fixer. Photojournalists usually have fixers. For war photographers, it's very important, but for us too, because they're the ones who open the doors, who translate, who introduce you to people. And whenever I do an interview, an exhibition, anything, I always talk about the fixers. I have a lot of respect, and without them, it would be much more difficult because we stay for a very short time, for about 2 weeks, which is very short. So in 2 weeks, you have to quickly have people accept you, open their doors and into their intimacy. So if you just come like this, knock at the door, no one's gonna let you in. So thanks to the fixers, this is how we get to do our job. So I met Mohammed, whom I had actually seen on the documentary. So I met him. As soon as I went down the bus, he was right there. So I said, Mohammed, and he was like, oh my God, how do you know me? And I said, well, I saw you on TV and this is why I'm here. Will you be my fixer? He's like, yes. So he took me to Umoja, as I said earlier, but it didn't work out. And then 3 days after, he said, I have another village. There's a new village with a women village. So we went, and this is how I discovered where I was able to do my work in that other village. And basically, quickly, is that it's a village where only women live with their children, and the boys at 16 have to leave. And basically, all these women have had a violent issue with their husbands, beaten up, repudiation, excisions. For example, they fight against excision, female excisions. You're saying excision in English? Yeah. Against female excisions. They fight against that. And so they are completely independent and very strong women. And I was so admirative of their courage that I decided to create a small foundation, organization, humanitarian, I mean, at my level, huh? And I've been helping them for 15 years now. So they're like my sisters. We're still very close. And I go back once in a while and check on them and, you know, we spend time together. And I just recently went back again in last January for my second book, but I'll talk about that later. So that was how I started the Kenya story. And then when I went back to France, I sold the story to Geo Magazine. It was my second time that I published in Geo Magazine. And the story had a lot of success. And many televisions called me to do documentary there. And I said, yes, but you have to give them money. Not the same way like I had, but you have to help them. You can't just go like this. And because I also have this foundation now, and I send the money through photos I sell, through jewelry. They make beautiful bead jewelry and different, you know, I do different operations to send them money. So I felt like I have some sort of a responsibility towards this village. And so I did that story, and then I started thinking, maybe I should look into more stories around, you know, women, not necessarily matrilineal or whatever. So I started doing research, and this is when I came across the whole matriarchy thing. And then I did research, etc., on that.
Yes, you visited 10 different countries.
Yes.
10 different places with different persons and different traditions.
Yes.
When you started in Kenya and you're saying that the women of this village are your friends and you are really close one to each other, I think that's really intimate. So you get informations, you can feel what they're feeling, you can tell much better the story of their life than others. And to create a foundation is absolutely great. Congratulations, really good idea. You started with the first story, and after that you went on. You just looked for other villages, for other traditions, for other persons, for other
always
women.
Around women, yeah.
Always around women. And I think if you can tell the stories you're telling with every picture about how they live or when they marry, what they have to do, and when they separate one from the other. And when you're talking with the women and they trust in you and telling you their story and the way they are living and the traditions they maintain, I saw one picture where you can see young women with a big dress with a text under it that when a woman of this country and in between these traditions marries, she brings her tent to the village of the man, so everybody can see from where she comes. And in case that they separate one from the other, she will take her tent, the children, and the animals.
Yes.
To her village.
Yes.
And that's only one of all the stories you're telling. You're letting us know so different things of living and traditions, and I think many of us didn't know that. It's nice. When you came back from Kenya and started with the second, how did you find all these villages in 10 different countries? How did you get in contact always with the persons?
Well, as I said, when I came back, I started doing research, internet, book, anthropologist. I met with several anthropologists, and one in particular, whose name is Françoise Héritier. She's a very famous French anthropologist. She was one of the she was the first, I think, female student of Claude Lévi-Strauss, who's more, I think is more known, but she's very famous in France. And she worked for all her life on gender, mainly in Africa. And I was very honored and that I went to her house several times and she followed my work. And she's the one who actually first told me about this whole matriarchy thing, how she does not believe that matriarchy ever existed. As I was saying in the interview yesterday in the presentation yesterday, is that People know the term matriarchy, but don't really know what it means. They just figure that they imagine that it means the reverse of patriarchy, meaning that in a patriarchal system, men rule, right? They dominate, whereas and that in matriarchal system, women dominate. But it's not like that. They don't dominate. They are really it's a bit more balanced. I would say that women have more of a social economic power, and the men more political, because although these societies may look like paradise for women, but no society is perfect. Yeah. So to go back to Françoise Héritier, so she really guided me through this work, and it's with her that I got familiar with the word matrilineal, whereas matriarchy. So matrilineal means that basically it's a female lineage. The transmission is through the woman and not the father, and it's only the girls who inherit the land and the house. Then this is matrilineal. Then another point also is the children belong to the mother's clan, and the guardian of the children is the maternal uncle. So he has responsibility over his nieces and nephews, but he has no authority over his own children. And the third point in a typical matrilineal society is also when there is matrilocal, which means that when a couple marries, he has to leave his mother's clan to move to his wife's clan. So this is typical matrilineal. So this is how I got familiar with this whole thing. And this is when I started doing research and to find what's left of micro societies, matrilineal micro societies throughout the world, because there used to be much more, but they're disappearing as the years go by for several reasons.
When you get in contact with the women at the villages, how long did you stay with them? Because I think to tell a story, you have to pass a bit of time with them to understand what they're doing.
Well, this is a big frustration. People tend to think that I stay months and whatever, but again, as I always say, I'm not an anthropologist, I'm not a scientist, I'm a photographer. We have limited time, limited budget. I don't work on just one tribe, I work on several tribes. So, and I have a family also, so if I leave all the time, my family's going to put me out the door. So I cannot stay too long. Unfortunately, it's too short. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be very honest. It's too short. It's about 2 weeks on the field. 2 weeks with the trip. I'd say 10 days on the field. But again, I'm not doing an anthropological work, even though it has an anthropological angle to it. But I think I am able to get a piece of their life, not the whole thing. And I think even I don't know if I'm right to say that, but I think even an anthropologist who works on one tribe for 20 years, he or she will go there, study the tribe, of course, have more information than me. But you will never be able to understand 100% another culture unless you're from that culture. So for us, even less as journalists or photographers or whatever. But I think it's enough to transmit this message, because the other thing is that when I was doing my research on reading all these scientific books on matriarchy, matrilineal, matrilocal, whatever, it was very hard. It was difficult because the scientists have this jargon. They have this they write in a very scientific way, so it's really hard to understand what sometimes what they're saying. So sometimes I would read the same passage like 3 times, and I was like, "Oh, am I stupid or what? Why don't I understand?" So I told Françoise Héritier, the woman, the anthropologist, I was like, it's really hard to understand everything, and talking to you makes everything more clearer. And she approved. She's like, I know we have this problem. I don't know if it's a problem, but scientists write for them. So the grand public, we say in French, and I say in English, it's like the public, whatever. When it comes out there, people have to really either be really interested and study it. It's like a research. It's like more like a university level kind of thing, Whereas I think the book that I published, Les Matriarches, had a lot of success. We sold like 14,000, which is really a lot for a photo book. And there's several reasons for it. It's also because this topic is very popular, even though when people tell me, oh, but it's a popular topic. I said, yes, but when I started 15 years ago, it was not. Yeah. So it's not like I did something because it was trendy, you know? Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So it became, so luckily for me, the book came out at the right time. But the thing is that also one of the other reasons why the book had so much success, I think it's because it's accessible to everyone. First of all, you have photography, which, you know, a photo has 1,000 words in it. You know, you can always understand more when you have something visual. And then I worked a lot. This is going back to what I was saying earlier. When I work with journalists, we're always two. But for this work, I did most of the writing. The interviews, most of the places I went to alone. Sometimes I had a journalist with me, like 3 times, but most of the time I go alone. So I do the interviews, the photos, the research, the writing and everything. So I don't like writing. It's not something I enjoy doing, but I don't regret having done it. And I'm going to do it again for the second book, which I'm preparing, because you go more in depth in the thing, and it's much more interesting. But on the field, it's not always easy to handle both. But anyway, so because of the photos and because of the captions, which are very, as you saw, detailed, it's not just like one line describing what's on the photo. I actually don't even describe really what's on the photo. Like the example you gave, it's not necessarily, I'm not going to say, oh, she's walking there and she's doing this. It's just basically the captions are almost like a story, continuing story, you know, it's just saying how because I don't want it to have a too long text. So the text is 1 page in the book. And the second book is going to be probably longer, maybe 2 pages. But the captions are very important for me. So this is why I think the book had so much success. It's because people can understand by the visual, through the visual aspect, and with the captions, which are very informative. And so people can understand it more than a thick anthropological book that people would not necessarily feel connected to, you know.
Thanks a lot for this explanation. What I'm really thinking is that even with 10 days being with them, you can see and learn a lot. And what you did is open a door.
Yeah.
15 years ago, you opened a door.
Yeah,
for
that's true. That's a nice way of saying it.
It is that way, like I see it, because just 15 years ago, opening that door, you get access to other possibilities for yourself, but you showed others what's happening in another country. And even in 10 days when you stay with them, and you see them every day, you talk to them, and you get a real confidence with them. They trust in you. And in 10 days, you know that a person needs 3 seconds to know if a person likes another one.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
3
That's
seconds
interesting.
to know if I like you or not.
Okay.
For the first contact.
It's like the first
feeling you got, if it's right or not.
Sometimes we're wrong, but often I think we're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the instinct. Yeah.
And anyway, even if you have to pay something for that, they can also decide not to do it. They have always the possibility to choose.
Yeah.
And these pictures are so powerful. Even without text, you can see a lot of traditions of the clothing they're wearing, how they paint on the faces, how they are preparing for a wedding or for a celebration. But with the text, you're helping the person who's looking at the picture to understand a bit more and to understand it on a deeper way. Did they offer you their traditions and proposed you what to wear and what to do, or did you talk with them and select it with them together?
Well, first of all, this is not to compliment myself, but I think I can. modestly say that I have a very easy connection with people. Because also I've traveled since I was little, and for me traveling is something very natural, to be in a country where I don't speak the language, where I know that some people are afraid to go because they have the language, because of this and that, which I respect, but I don't have that. On the contrary, if I stay one country too long, I don't feel well. But the thing is that because of this, and also I'm a very too hypersensitive person. And I think people feel that I'm not here to judge. I respect, even if I'm in a place where there's a tradition that I don't approve of, I'm not going to judge, even though I may think, no, this is not a good tradition, because there are obviously bad traditions too. But, we can talk about it, but not in a judgmental way. And, I smile a lot naturally. It may sound stupid what I'm saying, but it's true. I did one interview last year at a radio station in France, and she asked me, how are you accepted so quickly? And I said, because I'm just a friendly person. And she laughed, and she's like, well, that's a good answer, because some people are like, oh, because I'm very good at this or that. No, I'm just natural myself. I don't pretend anything. I think people feel that, like you said, the instinct, they feel right away. And so, some people, of course, have refused photos or closed their doors. They don't always say yes, but most of the time, I very quickly am in through the fixer too. It's not just me. It's also the fixer that helps, but then they have to accept me also.
Did you show them the pictures? Do they know the pictures?
Well,
how did they react?
Yeah, well, it depends. Obviously, the Kenya story, I'm in contact with them. So when I went back this past January, I brought the book. And there's one photo in the book. When actually I arrived. I went to you arrive in Nairobi, then you take the bus up north to Samburu land, and there it's like in the middle of nowhere. There's like a small village, like a western, like you feel like western movies. I was the only white person there. And when I was walking on the street, people would come and greet me like I was the Queen of England. It's really strange. It's funny. When you go to these remote places, you're the curiosity of the thing. So I go into the small, cheap hotel that was there, and I go in the lobby, and I see these three women sitting at the table, and one of them stands up, and she goes, Nadia Pu. Nadia Pu is the name they gave me. And she embraces me. And I was like, good, I didn't go too old because I hadn't seen her in many years. And so I showed her because now I can bring the book with me. So I showed her the book, and this is her 15 years ago. And so I have a photo, of course, with her holding the book. So now it's really nice because, again, as I said earlier, I'm continuing this work with more communities, which is going to come out in 2025. So I'm doing more communities, and so I went back to Kenya. I'm doing new communities, but the Kenya one, that one is special. That one I'm going back 15 years later. How is it today? So I did new photos. Of course, I was treated like a princess. I could do whatever I want. It's like, do this, do that. And they would do whatever I wanted because I've been helping them for all these years also. And so I gave them a book, of course. And now every community I go to, even the new ones, I give them a book. And for example, I was in Colombia and last year for the second book, and I brought this. And so I had a session with the Wayu, which is a community I studied there, with all the Indians, the Wayu, they were all around me from very little to very old. And I would show the book and turn the pages, and my friend and translator, Rashid, he explained all the stories while we were showing the photos, and they were all so interested. And then there's the Kenya story where the women paint their face here, with the earth pigments, the red, and with oil, animal oil. And so this is like their makeup. And the women in Colombia, they do the same, but they do like butterflies and stuff on their faces. So she's like, oh, look, they do exactly like we do. And I was like, how fantastic. These people they live from like thousands of kilometers from one from the other, and yet they have some similarities. So we're not all that different. So this was really interesting. And then an old woman came to me and she said, thank you so much for what you're doing for your work. Again, I'm not the only photographer who does that, but I think all of us that do that, it's important because she said, our traditions are disappearing. And because of your book, the future generations will be able to have a trace, visual, and, text, obviously, this is in French, but at least visual, they will see how we lived. So for me, I was so overwhelmed by happiness because, of course, I cried, but I cry very easily. So I was like, thank you. And so I gave them a book, of course, also. And so this is really an asset that now I can also give the book for the new communities I go to.
It's the best way to present your work.
Yeah. And plus they trust me even more.
To make all them see what you do.
Yeah, exactly. They know it's not something strange, that's going to end up, because that's the problem is not now, it's also very hard to take photos because of the social media. People are always scared. Like when I was in Grand Comore, my fixer, I had to find a family that's polygam, a man with several wives. So he found one for me. And with his 2 wives and all the children. And then before I took the photo, he said to the fixer, if I see this photo on Facebook, I will kill my fixer. So this photo, which is a very nice photo, and I had a hard time getting it, it's not in the book. I wanted to, and then I said no, because even though I'm safe, I'm here, but the guy, now you can find anything anywhere on Instagram and all this stupid things. So that makes it also a bit more difficult now to take photos.
But you're going on. You did not stop. Just for the second book, you returned to Kenya?
Yeah, for the second book, I returned to Kenya, and I will probably go back to Mexico too for the second book. So those are the only 2 I'm doing again. All the others are new.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're just going on. You do not stop to search, to research, to get in contact, to
And visit. I stayed in contact with all the communities, the fixers of all the places I've been to. I'm in contact with all of them all these years.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a great story. Absolutely.
Thank you.
At the moment, we're looking at the first book. You just spoke about the second one, which will come out next year, 2025, in French too.
Hopefully we're trying also in English. I'd love to, but this one is in Japanese actually also. And maybe in German, I'd love to, but
it should be.
Yeah, it's my editor. He's the one. He has the photos. I own the photos, but the book it's them.
Okay.
So I'm not completely free to do what I want, unfortunately.
No, but
that's another problem.
It's nice, and I think we will include the link to the episode to the first book, and as soon as you inform me about the second one, we will also inform our listeners about the second one.
Definitely, and there's also my website also, which is in English actually. All this work is in English on the website. So you have French in the book, Japanese in the book, and English on the website.
Wow, that's great. It's a good way to, even if we got the book, to check the text.
Yeah, but people, if you want to buy the book, go ahead. In French, though. I don't make millions, I'm telling you, but
The easiest way is to just make a picture and use Google Translate.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
There are possibilities to do.
Good point.
If you want to. Oh, fantastic. And have you ever lived a special moment staying with these tribes? Did you meet a very special person or happened something very special you do remember so clearly?
Yeah, well, there's many stories, but I guess again the Kenya one is probably the strongest one because I'm still very much close and in contact with them. But in India, where I was last year, a few months ago for the second book, in India, last year actually, it's the northwest India with the Kasi and Gentias. There's one photo there and for that, it was interesting because actually I had gone 15 years earlier to India. I did Kenya, China, and then I went to India to do the story. But I had a very bad fixer and a horrible journalist. I mean, I don't want to blame them. I have my own responsibility, but it's a teamwork. And if one or two are dysfunctioning, then the whole thing is messed up. So I did the work, but I wasn't happy. The journalist was paranoid. She was doing interviews that were so long. People were just getting annoyed. I mean, it was just chaotic. So, but I had a very good fixer for one day, but he had to leave and he put me with another fixer, which was not good. So finally I went back to France and I looked at my work and I was not happy with the work at all. I had like 3-4 good photos and that's it. So I said, I'm not going to use that one. Maybe I'll go back one day. And so luckily I have this contract to do the second book. So I went back. But Bante, the fixer, the one I had for one day, we stayed in touch all these years. And I told him I will come back. And I went back. And what was funny is that there, having a girl is very important because she's the one who's going to inherit. And if you don't have a girl, it's a problem. You have to sometimes go to fetch a cousin or whatever. It has to be a woman who inherits. So when I was there, he only had 2 boys, but no girls. 2 or 3 boys, I don't remember. And Bante said to me back then, oh, la, la, my wife is pregnant and I hope that we're going to have a girl. And finally, she had a girl. And so 15 years later, I meet his girl.
Great.
And so with the mother, Eugenia, Bante's wife, we became very, very close, much more closer to Bante. Bante is a good guy. But Eugenia and I mean, we cried when we left each other. So we get very attached to people. I get very attached to people, and so it was interesting to go back and discover this young girl whom was in the stomach of the mother 15 years earlier.
Wow, great story. Absolutely great moment.
Yeah.
And probably you do not recognize it. You do not need month of staying with the persons. 10 days, you can move so many things in less days.
Yeah, I guess.
And get a closer contact with the persons, personally.
Yeah.
Better, much closer contact than others, probably. Wow. I think you've known so many different persons.
Yeah, well, every time, every country I go to, every community I meet, whether it's with matriarchy or with other stories I've done, because I don't do just matriarchy, but this is my major work, but I do other stories too. For every new discovery, it's like a rebirth. This is why it's such a beautiful profession, because even though it's sometimes tough because it's ups and downs, but I'm so happy. I don't know, if I was 20 today, I'm not sure I would choose photography because it's changed a lot. I started with film. It was much more magical. There was something that you don't have with digital. Digital has a lot of good things too, because you can show the photos, it's cheaper. But there is something that's, I don't know, the world is changing, and maybe I'm just getting older too, so whatever. But the thing is that I'm so happy and lucky and privileged to be able to have it as my profession and to meet all these new places. And as I said, it's like a rebirth every time. And it keeps the child in you also, I think, and also not to take yourself too seriously. I mean, not all photographers are like that. Some are a bit more, like this, but because sometimes I meet photographers and they talk and talk and talk and talk about themselves and they never ask you any question. And I'm like, aren't you a bit curious of what the other one's doing? But anyways, there was like a lot of them are great people now, but like in every profession, there's good and more more interesting people. And in my profession, I have to be interested in other people. So if I never ask questions and I only talk by myself, I mean, now I'm talking by myself, but because I'm being interviewed, but usually I don't like talking by myself too much.
You're doing it really good. It's a pleasure for me to have you here.
Because I feel it, and you're good also.
Thanks.
Good journalist.
I'm trying my best. Thanks a lot. What we always ask photographers is, could you give our listeners a tip how to photograph? What would be your personal tip, your personal idea to photograph?
Some photographers are very technical, For them, the technique is like the priority, which is fine. It depends also what kind of photography you do, obviously. For my kind of photography, for a reportage thing, I think the most important is the emotion, the feeling, the instinct, capturing the right moment. Sometimes there's a situation where I want to take a photo, but they don't want me to. So it's very frustrating, but you have to accept it. And the most important on a photo is, first of all, again, the emotion it brings out, the composition, and the moment, and informative. It has to say things. And the thing is that because I like black and white photo very much, I started with black and white, but I'm not good at it. I see the world in color. I love colors, and this is also one thing that people say, oh, it's so colorful. I have a thing that, I don't know if it's meant to be or if it's, I'm very good at combining in one frame, picking it's there. It's not like I'm not a painter painting it, but there's always like some reference with a color that goes with another color. I don't know if it's make sense what I'm saying, but I have a thing with color. For example, it's very, very strange. When I look at my photos of my grandfather who took of us when we were kids, they're black and white photos. And I'm like, I don't know, 2 years old, very, very little. And I tell my mom, I'm like, oh, look, this pajama was blue. This dress was red. And so I remember I have a good color memory. And because they're black and white, so how would I know, And again, I was very little. So I have a strong relationship with color. So I think for me, it's color. And then there's other photographers who do beautiful black and white, but not me.
Thanks. I think that's helpful, absolutely. And if somebody of our listeners is interested to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
Well, I have a website where there's my contact, my website, I guess. There's my email, phone number, everything is there. Not my address, but...
Okay, perfect. So that's it. Thanks a lot, Nadia.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It was interesting talking to you.
No, it has been a pleasure for me, absolutely.
Thank you.
And you're smiling the whole time. It's nice.
I tell you, I smile a lot. I'm going to have wrinkles here.
Oh, so up to the next time, probably next year.
Yeah, I hope.
And I hope to see you again.
I hope so.
I'm curious to see the new book.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.